What's good with it, people? Back again with another video. I just finished up a workout. I may drop a couple clips in this video from that workout. So I had somebody hit me up, or they left a comment recently and said that they wanted me to talk about weed or cannabis, marijuana, whatever you want to call it. They wasn't super specific. He just said make a video about weed or my experiences with it if I have any. So I'll come from that perspective, this perspective of like my own personal experience with it, and just kind of how I see it. So when it comes to smoking weed or using like cannabis or hemp products or CBD, whatever, I am not opposed to it in any way. Like, I feel like for one, I feel like it has plenty of medicinal purposes, has plenty of very beneficial attributes and aspects that can be used for many different ailments and reasons. I also believe that hemp, well, I don't believe this, I know that hemp is one of the best plants for industrial use, as far as creating papers, creating clothing, just in general, just different materials and things like that. These are all factual things. But, and there's always a but, I feel as if cannabis use can become overly habitual and can get to a point where it starts to become addictive in a way that's like unhealthy. I got to a point where when I was, so I started smoking like casually when I was like, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, somewhere in that general age range. I had a friend from California who had moved here to Tennessee, and we skateboarded together, and he introduced me to smoking. And I smoked with him for the first time and was like, oh, this is crazy. And I kind of got hooked. And for a little bit after that, I didn't really smoke weed like habitually. It was kind of just like a sort of a novelty, casual thing where I would smoke like on Friday nights or something like that when I would go kick it with him. So I wasn't at a point where I had become dependent yet. As time went on and I grew up a little bit, I got a little older. Some of the other kids that I was kicking it with at that time sort of picked up the habit as well, and it started to become more accessible. It was around us more people were doing it. And so about the age of like 21, 22, I started getting to a point where I was smoking like all day, every day. Well, I won't say all day, every day, but I was smoking damn near every day. I was in a state at that time in my life where I was kind of talked about this in the other video, the last video I made about growth. I was just kind of directionless at that point in my life. I just sort of felt like I was just kind of aimlessly moving through life with no real direction. So weed sort of became like a comfort thing. It kind of put me in a place where I was like, I was just in an altered state, and I felt better about my circumstances. I was able to like watch movies and listen to music and do things like that, and sort of, I don't know, kind of get more engulfed into that than I didn't have to think about the depression and anxieties and things that I was dealing with in my regular real life. So then once I started to find out that smoking like that was sort of taking me away from my issues and sort of like numbing, and I guess in a sense some of the ailments that I had going on within myself, I started to use cannabis even heavier. I started to smoke not only all day, but from the time I would wake up to the time that I would go to sleep. And this lasted for years and years. This was until I was maybe, I want to say 25, 26 maybe. Probably more like 25. Where I was just habitually smoking all day, every day, from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep. I was in a position where I had it often. So it was easy. And I became overly dependent. And it didn't help that all the people around me were also as dependent as I was at that point. So this all kind of ties in. This was a good topic because it ties into my last video, and in the sense that I had to start kind of making a checklist and reevaluating my habits and reevaluating my priorities and things like this. So I was about 25, 24, 25, 26 maybe, where I started to sort of be like, damn, you know, like even though I was smoking weed all day, every day, and even starting to dabble in other things, I was still feeling very uneasy, still feeling very incomplete, very directionless, aimless. The effects that I was getting from smoking in the beginning were starting to dwindle. I wasn't getting the same sort of gratification and satisfaction from smoking and numbing my issues away. I was starting to now I would still be smoking and still be feeling all of these things. And it got to a point where it was just business as usual, and it was par for the course. That was just my lifestyle. And it wasn't even doing the things that it once was doing for me. So at that point, I had to sort of reevaluate. I started smoking tobacco around this time, maybe when I was like about 23, 24. Started smoking tobacco. That became a pretty bad habit of mine as well, that stuck, and I had a hard time kicking. But so now at this point, I'm feeling like, what am I doing? You know, I'm overly dependent on this substance, yet I'm not reaping the same benefits that I once was. I feel like I'm just wasting my money. I'm wasting my time. I'm starting to feel slightly ambitionless. I'm starting to feel like I'm living just to get high all the time. I'm, like I said, overly dependent to the point where if I don't have it, I feel grumpy. And, you know, I was never one of the people who was like, oh, I can't sleep or I can't eat because I don't have it. But I definitely had mood swings and mood changes because I didn't have it. And, you know, it was just like a flip, like a switch just flipped in my brain where I was like, bro, I can't be dependent on this substance like this. Like, I am not in control of my life. I'm not in control of myself because this has such a grip on me. So, like I said, I reevaluated and decided, okay, this has to stop. So this is when training and working out kind of came into my life. I started running 1 mile every day, literally 1 mile. That was all I could do. And I would run that 1 mile and I would be absolutely gassed out to where I couldn't do any other exercises after that. So I would start running that 1 mile and having that in my life where I was like, okay, I ran this mile. I know if I smoke, that's gonna like hinder me running and getting better at running. So it's sort of is counterproductive for me to continue to smoke all day, every day. So the running sort of took the place of smoking in the sense that it gave me some sort of satisfaction, but it also started to not make sense to smoke if I'm gonna run. So I went from smoking all day, every day to smoking like maybe once or twice a day, or maybe 3 times a day, you know, to where eventually I started to get more into fitness, more into working out, more into running, to the point where it just didn't make sense to smoke weed anymore. Even though it was difficult because I had those withdrawal symptoms where, you know, you're moody and like kind of fiending. And people like to say, oh, weed's not addictive. Yes, it is. I would even go to the extent to say that weed is in some ways a gateway drug when put in the wrong hands or put in the hands of someone who is immature and doesn't really have the faculties to make the best decisions. I would go as far as to say that. And if people want to debate that, we can debate that. But anyway, yeah, I was addicted, and I would go through these mood swings and so on and so forth. And I got to a point where fitness had become such a priority that it just no longer made sense to smoke. It was like counterproductive, and I wanted to get better. I wanted to get more fit. And I was like, so I got to stop. Even though, like I said, it sucked and I had to go through those withdrawal symptoms and blah, 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 blah. But eventually I got to a point where I had stopped smoking weed for months and months completely. I hadn't smoked at all. And then I still dibbled and dabbled a little bit. It was still around me. And I remember having a situation where like these girls were smoking and they was like, oh, smoke with us, blah, blah, blah. I was like, all right, whatever. I smoked and then left and was like driving home and was like, so my anxiety was like on 15. It was ridiculous. And I was just so high, and I was like, this is not even comfortable. This is a very uncomfortable feeling for me now, which is weird because at one point it was like, I had never felt like that. It was always just, except for like the very first time maybe I smoked, but it was always just business as usual. But it had been so long that now smoking had made me feel like uncomfortable. And I was like, I don't even like this no more, for real. So after that moment, that's when I realized like, yeah, I'm done with it. So that was probably, 25, 26. I think I was probably about 26 when I finally stopped smoking weed altogether. I was still smoking tobacco, which was also counterproductive, but smoking cannabis was way easier to kick that habit than it was the tobacco habit. And then that became a battle within itself. I had to play a lot of mind tricks and mental games to eventually kick that habit and get to a point where now I'm completely substance free. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do anything at all, which probably sounds boring to some people, but I'm kind of digging it. I've been like this for the last maybe almost going on 5 years, maybe 4 years, 5 years, something like that. With no substances at all, anything. And yeah, I'm digging it. I feel like it's a good place to be. I think I'm not knocking anybody who uses any substances. There's certain substances that I just can't get behind at all, and we could probably all, infer and guess what those substances are. I ain't got to say it, but there's certain things I just can't get behind at all. But there's other things that, like, listen, if that's your prerogative and that's what you like, so be it. You know what I mean? As long as you're not destroying your health and your body and so on and so forth. And then again, that's really your prerogative too. But I would never condone it. But anyway, if that's what you choose to do, I'm not saying these things are bad in and of themselves, but like I said, certain people get a hold of these things at young ages and times in their life where they're like going through those transitional periods where they're like going from their teenage years to their 20s, or you're going from your early 20s to your mid 20s, or whatever. Even if you started really young, from like adolescence into your teenage years or whatever, like that's typically when we get a hold of these things, and we don't know how to moderate ourselves, and we don't know how to put certain limits on the things that we do and how we do it. And we also are easily influenced at those ages. We see other people, the people that we admire or look up to, our friends, and we want to be like them, and we want to do what they're doing, and we get caught up, and next thing we know, we're not only smoking, but we're doing this, that, and the third. And you don't even notice it until you look up one day and you're like, what am I doing? So, like I said, these things aren't, to me, innately bad things per se, but they can definitely be harmful if used without some sort of discretion. If you're of age and you decided this is what you want to do and it helps you feel more creative or more vibrant or, whatever, then so be it. But I would also challenge you to maybe reevaluate that thought process and think about whether or not you're using this substance as a crutch and maybe trying to run away from something. I don't know. But I think there's a lot to be learned about living a sober lifestyle. You can learn a lot about yourself by being sober constantly and consistently. Something I didn't know all through my 20s. Basically, I had no idea what it felt like to be completely sober all the time. But even if you like to smoke a lot, maybe take some time and take a little break and see how you feel and see how you relate and see how you function in your day-to-day being sober. Maybe you'll find some sort of spark, or ultimately you want to be, in my opinion, you want to be the captain of your own ship. You want to be the one who's in control and dictating the limits for what you do and what you don't do. I don't want to be the person who was a slave to any sort of substance or habit or whatever that I just cannot seem to break. So, yeah, with that being said, I hope that sort of shed some light on my personal opinion on how I feel, my own personal experience. And yeah, if there's any opinions that differ from mine, that you want to discuss it, you want to maybe hash it out, see where you're coming from, see where I'm coming from, we could talk about it, drop a comment, whatever. And yeah, that's it. I appreciate y'all watching once again.